people have not been introduced, each one of you, but I can see you there. And it's indeed a very good morning to meet you, even though meeting you in the way that we're meeting. And thank you very much for attending and honoring the invite. This is what I'm going to do is more of a conversation than an address, a speech, as it were. I just want us to rather have a conversation on the matter that you have been invited for. Firstly, well, if the Deputy Minister is in attendance, good morning to you as well. Let me talk first about the mandate of the National School of Government in South Africa. Its mandate is to deliver quality education, training and development interventions to public servants across all levels and spheres of government. And this is inclusive of SOEs, ensuring that the vision of the NSG is achieved, where not only in the NSG, but in the whole of the Department of Public Service and Administration as a ministry, we are, in fact, the presidency is leading on this via a number of speeches that have been made that were pursuing the idea of an ethical and capable and developmental state, and within which there is an ethical and capable public sector in service of the people of South Africa. That's how NSG perceives their own vision within this priority as set out by the President of the Republic, that of an ethical, capable and developmental state. We are talking here about the service that will serve that particular state. Now, in carrying out its mandate, the NSG always has to bear in mind that the envisioned public service is one that is professional, one that is highly skilled and has capacity. Now, this capacity that we often talk about, each public servant is expected to have capacity to play their role for which they are employed successfully. And as the public service as a whole, what we are expecting them is to develop a capacity to turn, for instance, political prescripts, political statements, the wishes of the people of South Africa into policy, into programs, and into deliverables. They need to have this capacity so that when the president speaks in SONA, for instance, and outline certain priorities and outline certain objectives, this public service must be able, or public servants must be able at various levels to turn that, transform that, translate that actually into finally into deliverables in terms of the needs of the people. Now, I want to talk about two things that I want us to internalize as we do our work, particularly on professionalization. There are just two. Out there, the public service in South Africa doesn't have a good image. The image, it's like the image of public servants or of public service in South Africa needs to be cleansed somehow. It needs to be turned positive somehow. It needs, or it requires a turnaround so that that negative perception about public service in South Africa becomes a positive, it becomes a positive one. There are a number of things that taints the image of the public service in South Africa. But in the main, it's the perception that this public service is corrupt, or these public servants are corrupt. Whether you are talking about public servants, the elected ones, or you are talking about public servants, the ones that are employed, but there's a perception, a dominant perception, and a dominant worry that here we are dealing with public servants that are corrupt. Now, this has given, Zondo is demonstrating this. The attitude of people out there generally demonstrate this. So professionalism will happen within this objective, overall strategic objective of the ministry of wanting to turn the image of public service in South Africa around. And we're saying if we professionalize and professionalize successfully, this might have a positive impact on the current image of public service. But the second strategic objective of the ministry is to enable or empower public service such that it is able to translate whatever prescripts, whatever statements into deliverables for the people of South Africa. At the moment, the perception is that they are not skilled enough, the public servants. They are not empowered enough. They are not capable of turning things into, or quickly turning things around so that we achieve what we want to achieve. I'm sure things like recruiting people from outside South Africa, it does help to augment that particular perception that so South Africa doesn't have this particular skill or that particular skill, so the capacity is nowhere there, such that we have to recruit from outside. But there are a number of things, of course, that taint our public service. But in the main, I just want the team to work with towards this particular objective while you focus on professionalization of the public service, but have it in mind that we want, among other things, to turn the image around. We want, among other things, to ensure that the capacity of public service also turns around. Of course, there are a number of things like we outlined in the budget speeches, both in the NCOP and the National Assembly. There are sheer things like just a sheer lack of skills to some individual public servants. Those would be people who would have been employed with the hope that they would learn and acquire more skills and be able to do their work. They have qualifications. That's not the issue. They have qualifications, but simply to perform the tasks, the skill is not there. productivity, innovation, including things like laziness and incompetence. Now, those are things that taint public servants. And laziness comes in the form of extended breaks. When it is lunchtime, a person go and sit beyond the hours or beyond the minutes that have been allocated, and makes this or that excuse. No, I've covered my work, the work that I would have done from 2 to 3. I really worked very hard. I came here 8 o'clock, and I've quickly done a lot of things. So I would start at 3, and they continue to occupy each other's offices, talking just stories like what happened at the weekend, what's going to happen in the evening, and hairstyles, what to wear, what to buy. We're quite known for this, including in the frontline services, like in home affairs, like in police stations, in social development offices. You go to the front desk, you see people huddled in a corner. They are alive and they are healthy. They just give you a jab. I'm not talking about the coronavirus jab, the eye jab. Just look at you, and then they continue talking while you are waiting for the service, and you are in a queue, indeed a long queue. Now, those are the things that can't earn us the title of being professional when we still are engaged in these things. I know what I'm talking about. I'm a teacher by profession. I know exactly that at times some of our colleagues in the school used to sell periods. When the bell rings and you're supposed to go to class, and you say, I know, look, I'm marking, you can take my period of appearing in a class, in front of the class to teach. You sell 2 of your periods, so don't go there to teach learners, because you're supposedly covered yesterday, or you are marking today. So those are the things that characterize, in a way, our public servants. And we want to conscientize them at the same time, raise their consciousness that they are in the service of the people of South Africa. There are 2 things other than this in terms of what we take as our long strategic objective in terms of the turnaround. But there are practical things that are also tainting our public servants. At one point, we responded to a question about qualifications, and we said there are about 35% of public servants who are occupying positions for which they don't qualify. This came from just looking at PESAL at that time. We then, after that, went on to say each department must update their PESAL because it's their job to do so. And when they did that, the number or the percentage went down. I haven't received the analysis, but I know in public service, 34 of them were identified. And after updating our own PESAL in terms of data on qualifications, we remain with 1 person who is occupying a position for which they don't qualify. And when we inquire how this happened, is that the fellow was employed some time ago for what looked like a project, but then that job has since been described anew, and new qualifications have become a new requirement, and we couldn't fire the fellow. So it's not like he got employed without qualifications, but it happened in the process. But we know there are people that we are going to end up with who are occupying jobs for which they don't qualify. and we will then seek explanation from them, and there will be consequences for that. But at one point in the Zondo Commission, when the president appeared there, he was questioned about what is called cadre deployment. Now, when put in any way, cadre deployment would be perceived as just a situation where people get employed on the basis of their cards for the governing party. You produce a card, you get employed for things that you don't qualify for. Now, what we are saying is the task team will have to look at this, among other things, directly or indirectly. I'm sure the terms of reference wouldn't necessarily direct you to this, but indirectly there may be a way to say cadre deployment as a normal practice in democracies. Each time there's been an election, among other things, directly or indirectly, I'm sure the terms of reference wouldn't necessarily direct you to this, but indirectly there may be a way to say cadre deployment as a normal practice. Each time there's been an election,